Spatial analysis is used to support decisions. It provides us with valuable insights that enable us to make more informed choices. But GIS can't make the decisions for us. Working in an environment where you can change the parameter and explore alternative scenarios is, however, really powerful. It's certainly preferable to making mistakes that impact on our business, our health, or the planet. We've already looked at creating queries or filtering your data to select out just the data you're interested in using the attributes. In addition, we've explored how you can do spatial relationships determined by the geometric information using measurements from coordinates, for example, proximity. The topological properties of spatial data can also be used. That's the information about the relative position of the features. Actually, we use topological information every day, but you might not be thinking of it in those terms. We say things like the old building next door to the cafe, or the road with the great view that runs along the coast, or even the huge houses in the new neighbourhood. Well, that's a more colloquial way of saying topology, but actually they're all about topological relationship. It's about connectivity and adjacency. So as we analyse our data, we just need to think a little more carefully about how we structure the questions that we're asking of the data. Knowledge of topology is essential in spatial modelling, particularly if we're looking at dynamic modelling, which involves both space and time. Topological properties include connectivity, such as routes between places, orientation, which way does the river flow, adjacency, which region is next to another, and containment, how many islands there are within a lake. Have you ever heard of a topological map? Have you ever used a map for a subway or an underground, such as in London, Tokyo, Chicago, New York? Well, they're all topological maps, because what they use are the spatial relationship between the features, between the stations, rather than the actual geographic space. So they show that interconnectivity between stations and how the stations are connected in a sequence. Of course, some spatial relationships are measured both geometrically and topologically. And in those cases, we need to think a little bit more carefully about what questions we're asking of our data. Although sometimes those decisions are actually taken care for us because they're driven by the data availability. So let's look at an example. Suppose we want to see how many children have access to some newly planned sports facilities. So what are we going to ask of our data? Well, how many children can access those facilities? So perhaps we're talking about proximity. So I could find how many children there are near to that. And I would probably use a buffer to define how many children sit within a certain distance, within a fixed zone distance from those planned sports facilities. But I could also use adjacency. How many children are in the neighbourhood, and how many children are in the nearby neighbourhoods? So sometimes that choice will be driven by the data that I have access to. So if I had the actual locations of where the children live, then I might be looking at proximity and using my buffers. But if in fact I only have the children by an area, so for example by the census area, then I'm going to use the topological properties and I'm going to use adjacency. Using spatial data means that you can use the spatial properties of that data. And that's something we all inherently understand. What's nearby, what's within, how far things are. Those spatial properties are so important to so many questions. Geography really matters. And so use those inherent spatial properties of your data when you're doing your analysis. As a spatial analyst, you control the approach that you choose when you do your analysis. Now that's got to start with a choice based on your analysis question, the scale of your analysis, the structure of your data, determining the appropriate topological properties, and only then will you select the GIS tools that you're going to use for your analysis.